Hi folks, today we are going to start our cups, our clay cups that we are going to make. So eventually they are going to look like this, but we have to do some work in between getting the clay on there, getting it fired, and getting it back to us. So today you're going to get a few different supplies, things that you may not have expected. So one of them is going to be a can. Now the can is going to go eventually inside the clay. This way it will hold, we'll have a cup shape. If we don't have that in there when we try to wrap the clay around there, there's a good chance it's going to collapse and fall apart. So this is just going to be used to hold everything together. What we need to do is we need to wrap the outer surface of our can so that it's much easier to get the clay off. If we don't do this step, it will actually stick to the can, and then when we go to pull the can out, it will tear your entire project apart. So this step that we're doing today is the most important step that we can, because it's going to ensure that we actually have a cylinder shape and that everything is right. Now we only put paper around the outside. We're not going to put it on the bottom. We also don't want tape down near the bottom because the tape will sometimes get stuck in the clay. So maybe 2 pieces of clay tops, or 2 pieces of tape tops, so that it does not stick into the clay when we wrap it around. So let me get my camera set up and I will show you exactly how to do this. All right folks, so today you are going to get a tracer. This tracer is a piece of cardboard that we can use to trace out the sides of the can. What I did was I rolled out a can and I measured exactly how big it needed to be. This way we can match this to the paper, and this will actually be our pattern when we're cutting the clay. Now you're going to get a sheet of construction paper. If you put it here in the middle, you have to do lots of cuts, and sometimes those cuts aren't very clean. So the easiest way to do this is to put it into the nice clean cut edge. Once you have that nice clean edge, we draw right around our pattern. Oh, my pencil broke. Let me get another one real quick. So we're going to draw right around so that we have our pattern. So our pattern here, that's going to be the height of the can. So we need to make sure we trace that out. Once that's done, cut on the line. So take your scissors and cut straight up and down. Remember, wherever the nose of the scissors, that's the tip of the scissors, is pointing, that's where it's going to cut. So as long as you're keeping the nose falling straight down, it will work a lot better. Now I like to open the scissors all the way and make as big of a cut as I can, so that I don't have to do lots of little teeny tiny cuts that sometimes get knocked around all over the place. And then I'm going to cut up. So then I can test and see if that fits all the way around, which it does. Once that's done, I need 2 pieces of tape. Now you can set the tape right here on the table. Pull it out a little bit and cut. Put another piece on there and cut. That way you have your 2 pieces of tape. I like to put my first one on there, and then I'm going to make sure it's not dropping down below. I want to almost line it up with this little part of the can here. And I'm going to wrap it around so that it's even, and then that extra piece of tape there is very, very helpful. Please don't walk up to me with a can and say, well, I can't tape it. If you put the tape on there first, you'll be able to. Put your second piece on there. Once you have both pieces on there, then there will be a marker at your table. Please write your name on there. Also the day. This way, if your can goes into the wrong box, we can get it back to you. So make sure your name and the day is on there. Now, once we have that done, then we can start working on the clay part of our project. The clay part of our project is going to be using the same tracer, and you will be using a big slab of clay. So let me get that slab of clay so then you can see the next step. So for our next step, we need a slab of clay, and a slab of clay is like a sheet of paper of clay. It's thick clay, but it's flat clay. It's nice and smooth here. And we're going to take our pattern and we're going to put it right onto our clay. Now, you need to watch. Sometimes it's a little bit too small. Sometimes it's really, really big. So I'm going to try to find the best spot to fit, and that looks really good for me. I'm going to go ahead and take a tool out of my box. This tool that I'm going to use is called a fettling knife. Now, a fettling knife has a little bit of an edge on the bottom, and the top is a little bit rounded. So you hold it like this so that your finger is resting on there. When you're cutting, you don't want to have it turned. You want it nice, straight, up and down, and you make your first cut. So when you're hold it onto the pattern and just drag this towards you. You don't have to press very hard. This is in there by a teeny tiny little piece of metal. We don't want to break these. Any extra clay that you have, just put off on the side so that you get your spot nice and clean. And then I'm going to do the edges too, so that I have a nice clean looking cup. Remember, any sharp pieces that are on that cup, they will be sharp once they're fired. So we want to make sure we're going through and we're taking our time and cleaning up the clay as we go along. That's called craftsmanship. We want to make sure that we're utilizing good craftsmanship to get everything cleaned up. If it didn't cut all the way, just kind of go through again and then peel off that clay so that you have a nice piece of clay. The next thing that we need to do is we need to wrap this around the can. The easiest way that I found to do this was two ways. Number one, scratch attach. Scratch into the clay first. You scratch one side only. So I'm going to make these little cut marks with my fettling knife so that I have those cuts. Then, using your slip, and slip is just clay and water mixed together. It acts as a cement. So think cement, slip. You want to fill in those cut marks. So those need to be filled in so that we don't have little air bubbles in there and that your project does not fall apart. So we get those in there. It's filled in nicely. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our can. We're going to put it in there so that the bottom is even with the bottom. So the silver part is even with the bottom of this. You can even kind of take your knife and test it. If it's sticking out too much and you can't touch the bottom, move that can up a little bit. It will help you in the next step. Then, not the part that has the slip on it, the other part, we wrap it up. Once we have that wrapped up, what I do is I take and I'm going to score or scratch into this side. I'm going to take my slip. I'm going to fill up this side. So I'm holding on to it with my one hand and adding some slip with the other one. Then I'm just going to, as carefully as I can, roll it right around. And what you'll see is it will overlap, and where that clay meets, now we have to smooth it out. That's when a tool like this is very, very helpful. So we can hold on to this clay and we just smooth out that seam, because that's going to be a spot where it leaks. If we don't smooth that out, it is not going to be a good thing when you fill it up with water. So we want to smooth that out. Please, 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 please. I will say that again. Please, 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 please. Do not take slip and paint it around your can. It will make the clay fall apart and you will not be able to have a cup then. Do not paint your entire project with slip. It will not do what you think it will do. Now, for the bottom. For the bottom, we don't have a pattern. The only pattern we have is the can itself. So what we're going to do next is we are going to score this first. Now notice, I'm not setting it on the table because I don't want the can to get pushed up. I want that can pushed down a tiny little bit in there. And I'm going to score around and around and around and around and around. So I'm just going around. You can even tap it because this clay is soft. If you just tap, it'll make your marks. And then I'm going to slip. So I'm going to slip right around. right around, right around. Because the next part is going to kind of do two things at once. We are going to take our can, we're going to set it onto this clay. To help us, we're just going to do some big scratch marks on there. That will be in the bottom of the cup. It will be sealed up with our glaze. We won't see that. Now please don't cut all the way through. So we don't want stuff like this where we're cutting super deep and dark where we just went all the way through and now we have a hole in the bottom of our cup. Now that this is slipped up, make sure it's not super dry, make sure it is wet enough. I missed a little spot there, so I'm just going back in to do that. And then I'm going to flip my can over. I put it right onto my clay and I'm just going to set it down. I'm not smashing it down, I'm not trying to push it through. The bottom of that can, even though it's rounded, so the bottom of that soda can will actually act like a cookie cutter and you will cut right through the bottom. So please don't push the clay up into the bottom. We want it nice and flat just the way it is. So we just press a tiny little bit. And then we take our fettling knife. When we cut, we're going to go around the outside of this. Remember, keep it straight up and down. You don't want to cut into what you already have there, because that's how you're going to put a hole in it. So we want to go around the side. We're going to go around the side, around the side, around the side. Once that's done, peel your clay off. You will see the bottom is now attached. There may be holes in there. So the way that we fix that, we are not going to use more slip. So please, please, please don't use more slip on this. It will get too wet. We're going to take and we're going to use one of our tools and we're going to smooth this part out. Remember, this clay is nice and soft. We are trying to seal this up so that no liquid comes through. The more time that you can spend here making sure that that is sealed up and nice and smooth, the better your cup will be. So we're going to go around and around and around, filling up any little holes that we see. Your hand is also a very, very good tool. So if you see any little marks that you need to get, you can go into there and you can smooth that out. That way it's getting a lot smoother. Don't take it and start rolling it like this, because it's going to get lopsided and it'll get really thin in one spot. Don't try smashing it down and pushing the cup down, because once again you're going to cut the bottom and you will have a hole in the bottom that I can't fix. Once you have this part done, then class will probably be pretty close to being over. I will take your cups, I will write your name on the bottom so that we make sure that that is yours, and then we will come back for our next day. Now, the next day that we have, that's when you're going to be able to use the tools, you'll be able to use some of the other things to design your cup. So let me get those ready and I will show you what to do next. Okay, so the next time that we come to art, what will happen is your clay project will have dried up a little bit. It will not be leather hard where we can't really move it. It'll still be a little soft, but it will be set up enough where I can actually pull the can out, and I will also take out the paper. This is why we don't put the bottom on there, because if you have the bottom on there, it will pull the whole bottom piece out sometimes. Now, there's a couple things that we want to look at. Number one, we want to look at the lip of the cup. If that is really, really rough, what I will try to do before you get your cup is I will try to smooth it out a little bit. We have different tools that we can use. One of the easiest tools is just wetting your hands a tiny little bit and then going around, and that will actually smooth out the clay really good. So I have a wet washcloth there, and I'm just touching the washcloth and I'm just kind of cleaning up the edge. You can see here this ridge inside there. You don't want to put your mouth on that, and that's why the cups are nice and smooth. So I will try to go through and clean those up the best I can for you. Once that is cleaned up, there we go. Now it's starting to get where we want it. Once that is nice and smooth, where it's not going to cut your face, then we're not going to play around with it. So please don't push on it, don't cut into it. We want to leave it the way it is. Also, please don't pinch or squeeze the whole top so then the top falls over. I've had a few people do that in the past. We don't want that to break on you. Now, because this is set up, you can still draw on it, you can still add designs on it. We have a few different things you can use. One are some stampers. So you can actually push into your clay in there. If it is still a little damp, we can take and we can push into that. It's not going to go very deep, but it will leave enough of an imprint where you'll be able to see some of the flowers. You might be able to see some a little bit more here. This is a different design in there. We also have some shells. So if you roll the shell on there, it gives you a really neat design, or if you just press it once, it'll also give you another design. We have lettering stampers. I don't want to get that can stuck in there. So with the lettering stampers, I have two different types. These are newer ones. These click together, so you can actually make words on there. And if you take the stamper and you look at it, it will be set up the right way, and you can stamp right on there, and you can just space your name right out. Or if you're looking at bigger letters, you can take these, and there's a letter on both sides, and you can actually write a name going across there too. If someone's using all those and there's not enough to go around, then feel free, of course, to use any of the tools that are inside your bucket. So the things like the dowels. The dowels are great for little circles. So if you wanted to do circles and then you wanted to draw in flower petals, or if you take the tool, sometimes if you just push, you can make your own little flower petals inside there. And they really look really good because you can repeat that design over and over. So when you're making the things on your cup, think of it as almost like a fossil. You're trying to make that impression with it. You can even draw on there. So if you're going to draw out different faces, or you wanted to draw out a scenery, maybe you wanted to do some trees or something inside there, that is something else that you have the opportunity to do. Just please don't squeeze and don't cut through the entire cup. You have to have a gentle hand with this when you're working with our clay. Now, once we're done with this project, so once we're done designing the outside of our clay, we will let it dry. It will go through a couple different stages. The stage that it's at right now, it's kind of like wet clay, then it will go to leather hard clay, and then it will go to bone dry. Once it's bone dry, it will go in the kiln, and then we will fire the kiln, and it will come out like stone. Once it comes out like stone, that's when we can do our glazing. And with the glazing is, think of it as almost like liquid glass. We're going to paint it on there, and then we'll put it back in the kiln. The glazing is what makes it food safe. So it will also hopefully seal up if there's any little holes in the bottom. If something happened when it was drying or when it was being fired, we can get that sealed up. But we're going to do 3 coats on the inside. We'll probably do 2 coats on the outside, and that should give us a nice, clean looking cup. So this is the start of your cup. We're going to go ahead and begin. If you need to start using some of the stampers and stuff, I will have those set up for you. Cleanup with this is going to be the same all days. I will take your cups, I will put them on a special tray that has your name on it so that I can get them back to you. Whoops. Any supplies that we have out, whether it is the stampers, whether it is our clay tools, those all need to go back and away. So please make sure you have a nice clean area there. If you have big chunks of clay on some of the tools, let's try to knock those off. Don't carve into these, just wipe them off. Any little pieces of clay that you have can go into your slip container, and then we can close that up. Once again, any little things that belong to my box, we're going to put back there. Your tools will go in there. Please put the lid on. And then once I see your spots cleaned up, I will give you your wash bucket. Your wash bucket has a wet washcloth in there that has soap and water. Use that to wipe off your hands really good. Once your hands are clean, please do not play with the clay. Leave the clay there. I will come around and I will collect that off of your table. We can recycle the clay, so we don't want to throw that into the garbage. Once that's done, then sit down quietly and I will give you a paper towel. You can use that paper towel to dry off your hands. Once you are then all picked up, sitting down flat, quiet in your seats, I will call you to go. Once again, sitting flat and quiet in your seats, I will have you line up to go.